Hello and welcome to Just Ride Bikes. I'm David and this is the new Orbea Orca. It launched last year and it took me a while to get my hands on it, but here it is in all its glory, nicely perched on a log. So this is the company's lightest ever road bike and weighs 6.7 kilos, which is very impressive indeed. However, that is for their top of the range expensive model. This is a mid-tier model costing £6,000 and weighs, on my scales of truth, 7.5 kilos. So not as lightweight as that top of the range bling bike. And we'll talk about weight and how it matters later in today's review. So what's interesting about Orbea is they're offering you customers either a full-on aero bike in the Orca Aero or a lightweight climbing bike. They aren't doing that hybrid crossover thing of lightweight and aero like Specialized with a tarmac and Trek on a Madone. So interesting approaches by different bike brands to offer what they think consumers want from their bikes. So lightweight is clearly a focus of the bike, but also stiffness and frame rigidity for climbing efficiency. And you see that in the details of the frame. Firstly, it's a very good looking bike to my eyes. It's a classic shape. I like the almost level top tube, the non-dropped skinny rear stays, the very slender fork, and the massive down tube, one of the biggest down tubes I've seen on a bike in a long while. Really does go oversized into that bottom bracket and then tapers into the head tube, and it does come together really well. I think it's a very pleasing looking bike to my eyes, but let me know what you think by dropping a comment down below. And what do you think about the colour? I like the colour, I think it looks really good. I like the contrasting fork on the non-drive side. Yeah, it's a smart looking bike with the tan sidewalls, although they are a bugger to keep clean in the winter. But the nice thing about buying an Orbea, and definitely an advantage when you talk about value for money compared to other brands, is the fact you can customize the look of the bike through the Orbea website. So that's something that most brands don't offer. So that's definitely a trump card for Orbea. So as I mentioned, it's a lightweight climbing focused bike, so no real attempt to make it aerodynamic in any shape or form other than the internal routing, which is fairly standard on road bikes these days. On this model, we have a two-piece handlebar and stem, and higher up the range, you have a nice one-piece carbon handlebar and stem. So it depends how much you want to spend. The other key thing to know about the bike is the frame comes in two carbon versions, the same shapes and profiles, but different carbon fiber layout. So this is the OMR, which weighs just over 1,000 grams for a size 55. And then there's the OMX with higher grade carbon fiber, which weighs about 750 grams. So quite a difference between the sort of high end and the mid-range offerings. And for comparison, a mid-range Giant TCR Advanced Pro, which is a similar price point to this, has a frame that weighs nearly 200 grams less. Now let's talk about price and what you get for your money before I go for a spin and tell you how it rides. So this model here costs £6,000 and you get a Shimano Ultegra Di2 12-speed group set and the company's own shadow carbon rims on the zip hubs, and not the saddle. I swapped the saddle for this one here because the saddle it came with didn't really suit me. And for comparison, a Canyon Ultimate CF SLX costs the same with the same group set and similar wheels, but you do get a carbon handlebar and stem on that bike, which is more bling than the one we have here. And it's a few hundred grams lighter as well. And it's £500 less than a Giant TCR Advanced Pro, but that's also a few hundred grams lighter as well. And it's £2,000 less than a Specialized Ethos, but that bike is 6.6 kilos, so properly lightweight, almost a kilo lighter than the bike we have here, but 2 grams more. Okay, let's see how the bike rides. We'll do 2 time tests, a climbing challenge, since it's a climbing and lightweight bike, and then a roll and road test, see how it compares to an aero all-rounder. So this is one of the nicer climbs in my area, if nice is the right word to use for a climb. And rather oddly, the tarmac is lovely and smooth. And the Tour of Britain came up here last year, I think. So a good test for a lightweight climbing bike. So the bike doesn't feel heavy because 7.5 kilos isn't heavy. And a lot of bikes, sadly, weigh about this much these days, even high-end bikes. So it's not heavy. I feel great out of saddle. You can really feel the stiffness. It feels more exciting and more responsive than an Aero race bike on the climbs. And that's a hard part of the climb done. It levels off now. And a little kick in the balls up here. And that is the climbing done. Definitely passed the climbing test very nicely indeed.
No KOMs for me today, of course, but while this bike isn't a featherweight, it still feels fantastic on the climbs. The frame is clearly very stiff when pedaling hard out of the saddle, more so than other bikes I've tested recently. This proves to me that weight isn't everything when it comes to climbing performance and enjoyment. Next up was a Just Ride bike test route, an 11km rolling road circuit ridden at an average speed of 32 km per hour. Unsurprisingly, the Orca came in at the bottom of the leaderboard, but not far behind similarly weighted Aero race bikes. This suggests that while the Orca isn't designed to be overtly aerodynamic, it's still reasonably efficient at these speeds. And sure, this isn't a highly scientific test, I know that, but an easily repeatable real-world scenario where I can control as many variables as possible, like riding in the same position and in zero wind conditions.
So in a way, this bike shouldn't really work. It's neither aero or crazy lightweight. But the thing is, it kind of does. It's a very sporty and highly responsive road bike that is a lot of fun to ride. And the comfort has really impressed me. It's a very smooth bike. Despite only running 28mm wide tyres, which are tubeless and low pressures, and having a metal handlebar, the ride is very smooth on my rough roads, and definitely way smoother than that Seeker Spear I reviewed recently, a lightweight aero race bike. And the thing about weight is interesting because, yeah, this bike's not crazy lightweight, but it's not heavy. And I've ridden many way more expensive bikes that weigh as much, so 7.5 kilos or thereabouts, sadly, seems to be par for the course these days. But it is a shame it's not as light as some of the rivals in this sort of price bracket as I outlined earlier. But when you're climbing, will you notice a few hundred grams? No, of course not. It's just knowing that it's not as lightweight as it could be, and you're not getting the lightest bike for your money, for your budget, and that does hurt a bit. Not a bad place to stop at all, is it? So let me share some likes and dislikes before we wrap up this review of the Orbea Orca, and we'll start with the positives. As I said earlier, I love the way it looks. The frame shape, very classic, non-drop rear stays, skinny fork, skinny top tube, but massive down tube, and I like the colour as well. So positives, we have some high quality tyres. Vittoria Corsa Pro 28mm wide tyres. There is space for 32 if you want to go wider, but the comfort from the tyres is very good indeed. So even with a metal handlebar, the comfort is really good and better than that Seeker Spear I was testing a little while ago. One detail I do like is a seat post clamp. There's a bolt just back here which adjusts the tilt angle separately from the foreaft with this bolt here, so really easy to adjust and get the saddle perfectly set up. Much easier than some clamps out there. There are some bad designs out there, but that one works really well. Round seat post too. But then a small possible dislike is a seat clamp is here, so right in the firing line as you can see, but a nice rubber flap which stays in place, but underneath is a tiny 3mm bolt. A T25 or 4 or 5 would be better, I think. So yeah, small wrinkle there perhaps. The bottom bracket is a press fit BB386 and the entire width of that bottom bracket is used. I've not had problems on this bottom bracket standard with Orbeas in the past. Let me know your experience of Orbea bottom brackets by dropping a comment down below. Also a regular conventional round stereo tube in here for the internal routing, but the brake hoses are underneath the stem, so you can change the stem, change the handlebar as you want. And it is a nice handlebar, nothing special really. Swept forward a bit, for the hood's round diameter so you can fit your computer mount, camera mount easily, but not as snazzy as a carbon handlebar. So yeah, pros and cons, more adjustability and customization, or more aero and more carbon snazziness. But the biggest dislike for me, and it is a potential deal breaker for me, is the top tube. It looks amazing and it's very flat and very wide, but the width is the issue for me, just about there, and that sharp, well not sharp, but definite edge to the top tube. Because I pedal with a knee in style and my knees contact the top tube. So that's, yeah, like I say, it's a deal breaker for me because I can't really get used to my knees touching the top tube all the time, and other bikes like TCR, the Ultimate, have a slimmer top tube along there, so that is a real issue. So if you have a knee-in pedaling style like I do, this might not be the bike for you. I'm not sure it's something I could get used to or adjust my pedaling style, because I've been pedaling the same way for 20 years now. So yeah, that's a real shame really. That's a real drawback with this top tube design for me. But you might be okay if you pedal more knee out and more neutral. You might not notice that issue at all. So if you have an Orca and you've been riding it for the last year, let me know your thoughts on that topic. Do you have the same issue, or is it just me? I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. But that for me is a big deal breaker and would probably stop me from buying a bike personally. Choosing a road race bike these days, whether you're racing or just riding for fun, does come down to where you are on that sliding scale of aerodynamics on one end and weight on the other. And we are seeing lots of brands trying to do both in one package. But you could say they're a jack of all trades and a master of none. And which you choose comes down to who you are as a cyclist and where you're based.
The Orbea Orca has plenty of positives. It offers good value for money, it climbs better than its weight would suggest, and delivers excellent comfort. I was also impressed by its speed on rolling terrain, despite no real emphasis on aero design. Plus, the ability to customize a bike to your liking is a great bonus. However, the Orca faces tough competition from lighter bikes at this price point and from rivals offering more pronounced aero benefits. If your goal is all-out speed everywhere, the Orca might leave you wanting more. But for me, the overly wide top tube is a deal breaker. As much as I like the Orca, and I do like this bike, it will be hard to overlook other contenders in this lightweight road bike category.